Okay, we're going to start with the questioning. We have a question right here.
Hi, it's Jason Gorber from ThatShelf.com in Canada. I would be remiss if not recognizing that the tragic murder of Indigenous women continues to this day in North America. So thoughts out to those still missing and murdered in my country and the country's south. Mr. Scorsese, Mr. DiCaprio, this film started originally as more of a straight-ahead cop drama like the source material, and you decided to go in a very different direction, which was very costly, very time-consuming, but resulted in being able to tell the story that Lily and Leo, you get to tell of this dynamic of this relationship instead of focusing on that. Mr. Scorsese, we wouldn't have minded if you just made the straight-ahead movie, but you decided to take this twist. Can you talk about this stage in your career of still taking chances, and if the two actors and Mr. De Niro can discuss bringing these roles to life in such a subtle, complex, and nuanced way?
Thank you. Yeah, we touched upon it after having myself and Eric Roth and all of us together trying to get the story expressed from the point of view of the Bureau of Investigation coming in. And I said, well, I think the audience is ahead of us. They know it's not a whodunit, it's who didn't do it. And at one point, this is after 2 years of working on the script, at one point Leo came to me and he was going to play Tom White. Was it Tom? I think that Jesse plays. And he said to me, where's the heart of this story? And I had some meetings with the Osage and some dinners at Grey Horse and, of course, in Pawhuska. And they got up and spoke. And I learned a lot about them in those 3 hours. I learned about the people themselves and the stories, and they're all related to each other, and there's still relations, and there's still issues, and so-and-so was in love. No, he wasn't. Yes, she was. No, and it goes on like that. And I said, well, there's the story. The story is in the character that the least is written about, Ernest. And, of course, that's what Leo wanted to do. He said, let's try to find who Ernest is, or let's create Ernest as an example, or as I use my words carefully, but as a template for that tragedy of love, trust, and betrayal of the indigenous people and the white. It just happened, you know? And I said, well, if we could really get in there and twist and turn the story around, and then I knew we had, when we met Lily, we knew we had it, you see? And so that was the way to go. As far as taking risks at this age, what else can I do? What am I going to do? I don't know. What do they want me to do? I don't understand. You take a risk. No, let's go do something comfortable. Are you kidding? Comfortable, like sitting comfortable on a set in the heat? You might as well be risking. You know, I don't mean to be flip about it, but it is, you're right, it is a big gamble, but I don't know, we took a chance. Sorry, Leo.
You know, I remember us talking very early on about what Marty does so incredibly well is he's able to expose the humanity of even some of the most twisted, sinister characters you could ever imagine. He brings out the human condition in his work. We saw a few Montgomery Clift films very early on.
Yeah, The Heiress.
Yeah, The Heiress, Place in the Sun, yeah. Red River. And I think the gamble was to take on this incredibly important story that really was a reckoning with our past. I mean, so much has been learned in the last few years, and this story has, much like the Tulsa massacre, has been something that people have started to learn about and started to understand as a part of our culture, as a part of our history. And it was a really a throwback to, you know, great epic films of the 1940s that have at its center this very twisted, bizarre love story that we really worked very hard on. I mean, we almost went after the screenplay, all of us, from almost an anthropological perspective. Marty was there every day. We were talking to the community, trying to hear the real stories and trying to incorporate the truth as best we possibly could. And no matter what people feel about the film, I know we all did that work, and we tried our very best to pay respects to the real stories and incorporate that into the narrative.
Lily, you want to add something about the second part of the story, how you brought to life these so subtle and beautiful relationships, Molly and Ernest style?
The first thing that just stands out in my mind, not to correct anything about what you just said, but I think what we did transcended anthropological. We're artists, we're storytellers, we reach into the humanity, and Native peoples are used to having anthropologists come in curious about everything that we do. These artistic souls on this stage here cared about telling a story that pierces the veil of what society tells us we're supposed to care about and not. By focusing on these conflicted characters, who else is going to challenge people to challenge their own complicity in white supremacy and such a platform, except for this man here? Other artists are doing that work. People listen to what this one says. So turning the lens, turning the big lens, the most golden lens into areas where our communities, we're speaking of the 1920s Osage community. We're talking about Black Wall Street in Tulsa. We're talking about a lot in our film, and why the hell does the world not know about these things? Our communities always have. It's so central to everything about how we understand our place in the world. We also still need this, we need these allies. We need these allies, It's, so yes, it's, certainly there was the interest there, but I'm just giving you more credit than that. You were there as a human being, not as somebody who was studying people. We were immersed there, and there's no other way to tell these stories. There's no other way than to step in and allow the world that you're in to shape what you're saying. So, all of that. It's hard to, with a character like Molly, get too in there and too expository or try to explain like the thought behind the look, because that's doing this audience a disservice as well. Molly was a trick in holding true to not only the way she's perceived in the book, but by the legacy that she's left in the community. By playing an Osage woman who conducts herself with grace and with measure, but also with humor and with unshakable strength. It's the reason that those of you who have seen the film, and not to ruin it for anybody, but it was the driving force of why the end needed to be what it is. The cultural perpetuity, the perseverance. And Molly is an example of somebody who, I almost don't want to talk about an acting process when it comes to her. I just had to be there and receive what the community told me she needed to be. What my own family has told me about my great-grandmother Lily, who would have been Molly's contemporary, who was also a devoutly Catholic, but also a very traditional Blackfoot woman. And all of those things. So yeah, I'm not sure it's me finding it so much as it finding me.
Beautiful.